Hey folks, Amanda here. Just a quick heads up that from time to time, the Survivor's Guide to Thriving podcast does include some adult language. So if you've got kids with you, you may just want to hold on to this episode to listen to a little later. Enjoy!
Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Survivor's Guide to Thriving podcast. I'm Amanda Solman, and along with Mark Jewell, your host for this show and the creator of the Surviving to Thriving movement. Each week, we'll dive into the mindsets that keep us in survival mode and learn how to get on the path to a truly thriving life. If you're looking for a wake-up call and want some valuable tools to get there, you have come to the right place. After all, survival is dead. It's your time to thrive today. Now, let's head over to the show.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Survivor's Guide to Thriving podcast. This is your host and founder of the Surviving to Thriving movement, Mark Jewell. Today I've got a very interesting, maybe call it mad, guest on here with me today, and we're going to jump around a little bit. We're going to dig into a few very interesting things, and this might be a little bit different than some of the things that we do, but I think you guys are going to find it really interesting because we're going to dive into some maybe stuff that's a little bit out there from a technology perspective to give you guys an angle on kind of where I see things going, particularly as it pertains to our industry. And so we might talk about things that are familiar or unfamiliar, like blockchain, virtual reality, and beyond. And to do that, I have the mad scientist on here with me this afternoon, Mr. Seth Weinstein. So Seth, thanks for being on here. Welcome to the show. I'm excited to dive into some of this stuff. So give us all a little bit of background, man, if you would. Tell us about you, where you come from, what you do.
Definitely. First off, Mark, appreciate you having me. My name's Seth. I am, people call me the mad scientist because very much about my hair, I'd say, at this point. It's generally about what you'd expect a mad scientist to have. And along with that, it comes with my love and knowledge of overall technology and joy for all things digital and whatnot. So I've created a firm known as Perfect Presence, which is essentially an emergent technology specialist company. We specialize in all the new, the interesting, the weird, the funky, and the fun.
Got it. I like it. Perfect Presence. Very cool. Love it, love it. So, man, let's just dive into something here right off the bat and kind of dig through, right? Let's literally just get into something and kind of give people a little shot in the mouth of something. And so, I'm going to start with the one that I am like probably the most interested in right now, and I'm hoping to learn from this as well as provide a few chunks of information for everybody else. Because right now, I would venture to bet that the vast majority of the people that listen to this podcast haven't a clue what blockchain is. And I think in about 5 years, that number will be markedly different. And 10 years after that, everybody will know about it. Wouldn't you say?
100%. And it all comes down to the fact that it's been going for years now. It's been going since before even the first blockchain system was made, because there was protocols for years. This has been in the works, and I'm so glad that it's succeeded.
Yeah, absolutely. So can you give us kind of a definition? So, guys, some of the things that you're going to hear about that you've probably heard about that, blockchain helps support, probably the number one thing you've heard of is Bitcoin, which is digital currency that's basically built off of the blockchain platform. Seth, can you help us understand a little bit about what blockchain is? And on the tail end of this, guys, I'm going to talk a little bit about where I see some of the applications coming up in agribusiness, in the learning space, and in the corporate space as well. So, Seth, can you help us get our head around it a little bit?
Yeah, of course. So blockchain in its core essence is essentially it's a digital ledger of sorts that is what's known as immutable. It means that no one can come in and change this information. Now, that seems like a bit of a lofty thing, but when you get down to it, what this is it's the next step in technology that allows for us to remove intermediaries in usual situations that need 4 or 5 steps of completion, because we now have a system that can actually store and verify information to make it immutable and accessible to everyone at the same time, to allow for things like credibility and knowledge and skills and things like that to all be placed in essence a way where we can all be held accountable for our own proof of work and what we do, and the work we put into our daily everything.
Got it. So, guys, I'm going to frame up like one concept for you, and then we're going to dive in, maybe just, I don't know, maybe even a little bit more granularly, if that's a word, or to get a little bit more of a granular level on kind of how it works. But, so just imagine, if you would, Congress, right? Let's take, so Seth lives out in Maryland. He's close to D.C. You're close to the action out there as it pertains to the political climate in America. And so let's just imagine that we had a government system where we sort of could all vote digitally, and we could be voting our where we sit on a number of different topics, on the things that we want to be heard. And so just imagine that was possible, right, in a way that couldn't be corrupted. Is that, Seth? Is that kind of something? I'm not completely off
yes,
base.
No. You're right? On the right track. Yeah. You're on the right track.
Exactly. And so I mean, how does blockchain allow us to talk about distributed ledger? Talk about how we kind of keep each other honest with this technology.
So what's really cool about this is controlled by the systems, in a sense. All of these different computers, all of our different access points that we use, essentially create another key or access point to the blockchain, another system to verify things. And there's people who are being rewarded constantly, essentially, to verify all of this information through hashes, essentially, which make up the value of what are generally known as tokens or coins for some of the more commonly known things. But I want to talk a little bit about the lesser known things, which is more of blockchain as a service, which is where the big revolution is going to be happening. You've got companies like IBM, GE, State Farm, things like that are starting to embrace different elements of how they can use blockchain, and are now accepting proposals from different companies to find best ways to do that. Because I think insurance is a great example. It can, instead of you having to go out and figure out, okay, they need to gauge my what my deductible is going to be, and how much of a risk factor I'm going to be, and all of my other accidents, and all this stuff, and da 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 da. And while they're collecting all this, while they're getting all this information there, you're basically sitting there figuring out, okay, how do we know this information isn't tampered with? How do we know this information is accurate? And what the blockchain system allows for us to do is it allows for all of these accidents, all of these incidents, all of the information, all of the liability to be varied off of actual algorithms and statistics that get verified by hundreds of thousands of users, not necessarily all at once hundreds of thousands of users, but across a varying degree of users who are essentially helping verify these things through a platform. And it's because it's a distributed ledger across every single person who uses it. So if you use the ledger, you're helping the ledger grow. You're helping the ledger be strong, and you're another node on that overall network.
Perfect. I want to take this just into a little bit of a agricultural context, and so many of our folks, Seth, kind of live and work in this agricultural space, whether it's the actual food production or distribution thereof, or selling things to farmers, and et cetera. And so guys, let's just take an example of verifying a certain commodity is free of something, or has something, or comes from, let's say, even verifying that it comes from a certain seed number, or a certain field, or we could literally trace everything back to the very spot that it came from on a certain field, because we're literally able to track all that data, and then it's kind of traceable from everywhere from the field to the farm gate. And so those are some of the cool things that we'd be able to verify, and entire governments would be able to know, hey, that this we do this already. We test things that if we're sending corn to Europe, and that's that has to be what I want to say, if that has to be verified as GMO free or something like that, or pesticide free, or whatever the situation might be, we'd literally be able to track that in these ledgers, and everything can be verified, and it's all, it keeps everything very honest all the way across the platform. So those are some of the kind of cool things. And the way that I understand it, Seth, is effectively what happens is any transactions or any data input that's happening within this system effectively are sort of saved every 10 minutes into these blocks, right? I mean, that's kind of where the term blockchain comes from.
Right.
Cool.
Right.
And it's just a chain of
it just
information.
keeps growing.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
And then as
100%.
those pieces of inputs are happening, it's saved all the way across, right? So like everybody who's on this system will literally have a record of everything else that happened across the system, which makes it not all the data is stored in one central place. Correct?
Right.
Okay.
And the fact is, no matter what you do, you can seize a bunch of computers, you can destroy computers, you can edit data on a computer. But the beauty of it is the blockchain becomes immutable because the blocks have already set in place.
Exactly. And so I think probably there's a good number of my, more conservative friends, and maybe some others that listen into this, that as we think about being able to have currency, data, intel, information that is kind of owned and run by those of us out in the environment, as opposed to the government, as opposed to a central banking system. And these are some of the things, and one of the reasons that Bitcoin is doing so well right now, why Ethereum and other digital currencies are performing incredibly well, is because there's a movement amongst people to take information away, to take the centralization of currency away from government and away from banks, and kind of give the finger, right, to the big to the big banks and say, hey, we're taking this power back and we're going to keep it amongst ourselves, right? I mean, to me, that's one of the things that's kind of exciting. I know that will resonate with a few of you guys listening in. So, Seth, any thoughts on that?
No, 100%, because the biggest thing is that a lot of more people have smartphones than they do bank accounts in the world. That blew my mind when I learned that statistic, and I think that's one of the most dramatic factors that came with my early knowledge in the blockchain space.
Yeah.
I mean, you're looking at places like Ghana or wherever that have any number of different issues where people don't have finances, and the way how the microfinances work with systems like blockchain is going to be a phenomenal, like blockchain in itself. And I'm not trying to say anything and make any claims to anything, but blockchain could solve world hunger. Blockchain could legitimately be a way for us to solve world hunger and poverty by distributing the wealth more evenly to those who actually can get it or need it or work for it.
Yeah, absolutely, and I don't even know if it's distributing. I think it's giving access, right? I mean,
it's more, 100%. Right? It's much more access than giving, because if you're still doing the things for the higher cost, you're still going to get more of it. Mm-hmm. It's more of the fact that a penny can go farther now. Right.
Absolutely. I mean, I've seen some data on this, as we kind of look across the grand spectrum of this. So we've got the platform effectively for doing business in more countries is in place, right? So smartphones are being distributed, access to the internet is distributed. So, you could be living in a third world emerging country, right? And still have access to the same platforms to do business, to create a business online, to do something that way, right? So we start thinking about entrepreneurship across the globe, but also for those of you that already have businesses, or maybe you're in the food production space and you want to start marketing a specialty crop or something, or find a more effective way to market your commodity, across the globe. Now all of a sudden we're going to have new markets opening up and new places available that weren't available for, and with currency that has consistent value from here to your poorest country on the planet. And all of a sudden, the marketable people that you can reach on the planet goes from, around 2 billion people, right? And now all of a sudden you start to have access to those other, 4, 5, and eventually 6 and 7 billion people that we're going to have access to in the next 20, 30 years. So
Exactly.
to me, it's really exciting. It's the equalizer. It's something that's happening, right? And so as we think about the concept of taking the planet, literally the planet, from surviving to thriving, economically, from a food standpoint, from all the things that are important to my listeners, Seth, this is one of those things. Through technology, we can do some pretty kick-ass stuff.
Oh, 100%. And it's kind of interesting when you look at the contrast of all of this. You still have islands out there in the world that have yet to discover anything beyond bows and arrows.
Sure.
Like, and it's astounding because what is going to be happening is the last vestiges of these types of societies are most likely going to start disappearing in lieu of the connectivity that we're finally providing to people and giving access to.
Right.
I believe.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to change a lot of the status quo across the globe, like you were saying. I mean, imagine if you could, I just love the idea of being able to say that you could send someone from the US to, let's say one day on the moon. For sheer example, because that's a huge analogy that everyone in this space loves, is what's going to the moon.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say, for example, we're actually sending $10 million from Earth to the moon. With blockchain node-based technology, one day that's actually going to take maybe 5 minutes.
Sure.
That's freaking awesome. And I mean, like, it comes down to the fact that not only is that going to take less and less time and be more and more possible, but all of the time dilation that comes with space-based travel and things like that is going to be easier and easier to eliminate by creating more and more solid ways of connecting our systems together. And this is part of that. This is a huge part of that.
Absolutely. So these are some of the things, you guys, as we think about the world that we live in, solving the food shortage issues of the planet, making sure, hey, we've got an extra 2.5 billion mouths to feed by 2050, right? And that date keeps getting closer. It's not getting further away. We're literally in 2017. We're only got about 33 years to figure out how do we actually feed an extra 2.5 billion mouths, where we already have people on the planet that are going to bed hungry. And in fact, 1 out of 5 Americans going to bed hungry every night still. And so how do we continue to get more efficient and do better things? And you're talking about being able to do a lot of that through technology. And this is just one of those things that makes that communication, that exchange and trade of value, and have it be documented and have it be safe and have it be fair across the different societies.
100%.
Right? So
100%.
I don't think, in my space, Seth, I don't think a lot of people are paying attention to this right now. I think obviously some of the folks that are on the forefront that are thinking about this, and one of the important things is, if you're that young professional that's tuning in today that wants to be on the cutting edge of knowing something that's going to be incredibly important, you're looking for that marketable differentiation for you, this is an area I'd be studying right now. So
100%.
Yeah, so this is your intro class.
People are getting into it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So few people are getting into it. The fact that we as my team, Ken, has some of the developers that actually have access to some of the higher end platforms that have been created as blockchain as a service platform. So I'm excited simply because the fact that I'm about to get out there and start taking my swing at the blockchain technology side of the world and just see what happens.
Absolutely.
Because that's what it is. That's the space we're living in right now. But the thing I'm most looking forward to is when a man over in Russia can use a goat coin that represents the value of his goat, trade that for some Bitcoin. That Bitcoin then gets traded for some gold. That gold then gets traded for something else, and just this continued addition to the society of trade and commerce that we live in, and letting it all mesh and blend together into just one unified thing.
Yeah. Beautiful. I think that's a very good summary for it right there. So let's put that one to rest and move on to the next topic in here, Seth. And so actually, before I get in, I want to talk about virtual reality next. Before I get there, man, I want to let's go back into the story of Seth. Help us to get to know you a little bit better. I'm kind of curious if you've got somewhere in the catalogs of your mind, do you have kind of your own surviving to thriving story that you have lived at some point? Could be big, could be small, could be a life theme, could be one thing that happened.
No, of course. So I think the biggest thing for me, and this is very cheesy for people my age, for entrepreneurs my age, but college was that for me because I completely screwed that in so many ways.
Sure.
Beyond the initial factor of choosing a degree that was absolutely useless and could have just been done by me going online and learning some stuff and doing it myself, which in hindsight is a lot of those right now, but we'll talk about that never. But and the thing about it is when I was left into college, I was given a college fund of $100,000 that my great grandfather had been saving up for years for myself and my brother to be able to have access each to enough money to get ourselves through college.
Okay.
And that open-ended access threw me into needing to learn how to thrive on my own and how to find my way as I'm sitting there just surviving after wasting every cent in that account in less than a semester of college.
Yeah.
So now I'm sitting here, can't do college anymore because I just wasted the entire fund. Don't really want to do college anymore because I didn't actually get any value out of it, simply because, again, I chose to go to school for film. Which, again, I have nothing against people going to school for film. I still think it's a great thing to do if you're trying to get into it. But if you actually spent a lot of time studying it in the past, finding the more direct stuff is a lot in college because you lose a lot there. So I had to learn how to survive, and I actually started working regular retail day jobs, and it was draining on my soul. I couldn't even look myself in the mirror without kind of just being like, yeah, that's okay. Because you don't really realize what you truly want until you can sit there and be like, everything's pretty shit right now. And when you get to that point, you really figure out, what do I need? What is the thing? Because after wasting $100,000, I realized what I don't need. That's the most important thing. I don't need things. I don't need all this crap. I just need me being able to do what I love, frankly.
Yeah. Interesting. So you literally had all the advantages of somebody who had kind of had what a lot of people would probably call have things kind of handed to you on a platter, so to speak, right? You've got $100K to go off to college and get your degree and get your life started with. Effectively pissed it away. And and now you get to go.
Regret it ever since.
What did you tell me? You got to go work at Verizon or something and sell phones on the sales floor?
Yep.
Yeah.
Got to work at Verizon Wireless. That was fun. Plus, my slight technical knowledge made me the tech guy, which means
of course
every single person who came in, it was, tech support. Seth can help you. Didn't make many sales.
Got it.
Spent hours with customers. Learned a lot about customer service. I'll tell you that much.
Perfect. All right, so fast forward a little bit for me into that story, right? So you obviously leveraged that experience and you probably were able to turn that into something valuable. So how did that help you as you got into your own business, started doing your own thing, kind of figuring out your passion? How did that experience, how did you leverage that experience going forward?
So this was the first real sales job for me. I had worked at some other cell phone stores before, but this was the first one that I had to actually work for something. Like I could tell too. There was more that had to be done in each of these steps and each of what was going on than I had thought prior. And it also exposed me to how businesses worked much more directly because my manager was very opaque or transparent when, I don't know why I said opaque, transparent when it came to the understanding of what was going on and how things really worked and where the split was coming in and things like that. And that actually helped me understand how commission structures work, how to actually scale yourself, how to find a business, how to look things up, because everyone had different approaches. And I was sitting there just learning it all. But at the same time, I was killing myself selling something so basically lay down sales in more ways than one.
Sure.
And it just wasn't keeping me interested enough. My brain was basically dying because I grew up, because the biggest thing is I learned how to sell, but I always grew up wanting to have a challenge, wanting to do something extremely, extremely hard and make it happen. So I had to force myself to just drop the full-time job altogether, not even try to keep it, and just full-blown jump right into entrepreneur, living on my own. It was really rough. That was probably the hardest decision I made. I was very, very broke for a very, very good amount of time before I started making like $10,000-$20,000 sales that grew into what are now $50,000 to $100,000, $1 million, couple $1 million sales for high-level technology projects, and we're just getting started. Honestly, you know, I'm not exactly some well-off guy. This is me on my pivot.
Yeah.
This is my pivot point, pushing forward to actually make what I've always wanted to have happen.
Right. So, you know, I mean, guys, there's a big story right here. I mean, a great storyline. I mean, your sort of upbringing. I mean, obviously you had some access. You know, you had some advantages for you going into those early years. And you know, if the proverbial theory were to pan out, right, like that should parlay into more success. Yet there was still, for your journey, there had to be some almost like a downturn, right? Almost like some sort of valley that you had to kind of crawl through in order to really vet what you're here for and start moving up the other side. And so, you know, really, so here's something that's interesting, Seth. I studied this a lot, you know, in our method in the book that I'm putting together, The Survivor's Guide to Thriving. What we know is like really the only way to go from surviving to thriving. And you, by the way, like you can have abundance in your life. You can have, you know, things moving in your favor, or start out with, you know, something that was kind of, you know, given to you and still be surviving, right? Because we just don't maybe appreciate it enough, or we don't see it, or we don't really realize what we have. Right, and I'm kind of like you. I've got a story similar. I was in a car wreck in high school. I ended up getting a settlement that came out of that right before the check finally showed up right before I go off to college. Right, and it was like a $20,000 check, and so I had this money in my bank account, and I'd never really had money. We grew up poor. You know, I was funding my college through scholarships and student loans, and kind of the typical American story that way. Had no idea what it was like to have this much money, and by the end of my freshman year, it was pretty much gone.
Oh yeah, don't get me started. I ruined it all, and then I had to get loans.
Yeah, exactly.
Loans were the worst part afterwards. I'm I'm sitting there looking at these like, wait a second, I could have paid for this, couldn't I have?
Yeah.
It's like, you really could have. Good
job.
Now,
knowing what I know now about starting business and building teams, I mean, I know exactly how I would leverage that $20,000 to enhance my current business and grow it, and I would pump that into some Facebook ads, and I would pump that into a new funnel that would target our audience and help us get new leads and grow the business, and I could turn that into a lot more. But the difference is, right, I had to experience that suffering. Right? I had to experience something that maybe was uncomfortable before I could grow into that next best version. So we all get to go through that, and that's a big piece of learning. Here, and just like you went through, and really kind of come out the other side of, hey, now I have this great, amazing story hotel. I had to go through some shit to get there. But
right.
But here's the upside. So the question. So let me ask you this. If it meant getting to where you are now, would you go and piss away $100,000 again?
So I know most people would say yes, but I have a bit of a varied view. Mm-hmm. My knowledge never changed over those few years beyond the factor of understanding how bills worked.
Sure. Which
kind of just irritates me that no one ever explained this stuff to me growing up. Would have loved to know how bills worked. Would have been grand.
Fair enough.
But honestly, if I had this money again, I would have bought myself a house. I became a slave to the rent system for many years because of my decisions, and it was absolutely tragic. $100,000, I could have bought myself my first house. Could have made it a rental. Could have moved on.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Could leverage it.
But at the same time, even all of that being said, and even though that I said what I said at the beginning of this, I'd do it again.
Perfect.
I'd still, through all of that, through the understanding that it's the most ridiculous thing in the world for me to say these words as they are uttered from my mouth, But yeah, I'd probably do it again.
Yeah, absolutely. I hear you. I would do it faster and sooner in my own life.
Right.
Right? I would try to get this done as quickly as possible. And I talk about this a lot in my programs, right? So if I know, like we talk about the hero's journey, right? And on the journey to go from zero to hero, you're going to go through some shit. It's inevitable, right? But if we look at that hero's journey and take that across all of your favorite hero movies from whatever, what's a favorite hero movie for you? So for me, it's like a Braveheart, Transformers, something like that.
Ooh,
What's
that's
Seth's
a hard
favorite one?
one. I've got a bit of an eclectic one. It's going to be John dies at the end. And I know that sounds
Okay,
very strange.
got
And
it.
everyone's now going to be looking this up and being like,
What
John
is
dies
this?
at the end. I
What
wonder
movie is
what
that?
happens at the end. Um, uh, spoiler. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
But no, really, it's amazing because I love characters that are grounded in reality to an
Mhm.
extent of understanding. It's like horror mixed with understanding of the brutal, realistic way of how some people would respond to a situation that no one would honestly know how to respond to,
Right.
and the philosophy behind that.
Got it. And so I'm assuming whoever the main character is, let's call him John. I've never seen the movie, but
Actually, it's
is
David.
it's
But
David. Okay, so David,
it's
so
David, yeah.
David, I'm assuming goes through what we would call an extraordinary circumstance at some point throughout this, right? Perfect. All right. So 100%. He definitely goes through that. And so one of the things that, that comes up for the, for and just in just about any of these movies, and we could even go back and get into some biblical stories that we've heard over time, Moses and Noah's Ark and different things like that. There's always a consistent theme, kind of start out as just, life is kind of moving along. There's a trigger, which leads us to an extraordinary circumstance, right? And after going through that extraordinary circumstance, you come out as a new, different, hopefully better version of yourself. And so what we find, right, is that this story not only works in the movies, but it works in real life. Right, just as you've exemplified here, you went, you were kind of moving along. You had, things were fine. You had an advantage, and you messed that up, and so then that puts you through the extraordinary circumstance that forms you into a better version of yourself, who now knows how to sell, and you leverage that idea, those ideals, into multi-million-dollar contracts, right? So you kind of get
100%.
that's how it works. And the thing is, like, knowing what I know now, I would simply, and I continue, and I do this for myself, I will opt into the uncomfortable or the extraordinary circumstance rather than wait for it to come to me. Right. So I will go and I will seek. I say, okay, what is the thing I need to go through in order to obtain this new skill, which will put me this much closer to my end goal? And that's what life becomes about, is just doing fun, crazy shit all the time, so that I can, so I can have a fun life. And then if I get my goal at the end, that's a bonus. But I will opt into new stuff along the way. And when you do that, you can literally compound time in your life in order to have that great, amazing life experience. So that's the point. And I
Yeah.
appreciate you giving me a story that allowed me to highlight that, Seth, because it's perfect.
Oh yeah,
It's absolutely,
wholeheartedly.
yeah. All right.
I mean,
So,
it's the journey a lot of people are afraid to take, and
yeah,
oftentimes it's both the title of one of the books I'm writing and the thing I tell many people. But a lot of times it's just you gotta start already.
absolutely. Absolutely. That is a perfect placement for looking at the book. So, guys, watch for that coming out. The book Start Already is going to be out here at some point down the road. So,
Some point.
yeah,
I love that. I love the well, just as a moment. I love the ambiguity of that, because I mean it is one of those things, like, you're halfway through it, but you know it has to be just right, so you can't give people a date,
right. Yep.
but you know you got to finish it. Love it. Love it.
I'm right there with
Anyways.
you on the book writing experience. So, but let's just say, if we could leverage technology to face extraordinary circumstance and level up our skill sets and augment reality, so that we could actually, live maybe even a more full life and level up more quickly through tech. So let's dig into virtual reality. I know that's a passion area for you as well. So let's talk about that side of the tech sector, and what does that all mean? So give us kind of a high level definition? Virtual reality, probably more of us are, we're more familiar, or we've seen the goggles or different things, but that could mean a lot of different things, right? That doesn't necessarily mean you got to wear a mask to experience virtual reality, right? So let's, where is this space going for us?
So, virtual reality is absolutely phenomenal because of the fact that what it is trying to do is create immersive experiences. Augmented reality, on the in another stance, is trying to put experiences into our own world, blending reality or augmenting. The thing about virtual reality, which is so cool, is the fact that you can create fully custom environments that, through their creation and through their careful curating, you can create environments and situations that can actually help people in multiple different ways. For example, you could have an entire virtual business management system. You could have a virtual CRM, which it seems mundane right now, but when you think about it, instead of going into a room and picking and opening up your computer, looking at your 3 different screens, instead you put on a virtual headset, strap on a couple things to your wrist, do a couple of hand motions, actually point at something, grab it, drag it, and do something with it, and the mouse and the keyboard and everything become part of just this environment that you're in. So the possibilities are becoming endless and exponential between all of these different possible niches and things of that nature. One of my personal favorites is what we're going to be able to do with medical because of it. Simply because of the fact that with 360 cameras and as well as 3D modeling, we can actually go through and help create really particular training for people that is actually based on situations that will seem real enough for them to understand how the situation needs to play out.
You bet. I love it. I mean, what we're going to be able to do, I'm going to share an experience that I had last week, and then I would love to kind of get your input on, how could we make this happen in a virtual, experience. But, Friday night I was in Indianapolis, and I was there for an event for the National FFA Convention, which is the largest youth convention on the planet, and there was 62,000, young people there registered. And as I watch the keynote speaker on Friday night. I get done. I realize I haven't eaten supper. I swing into this little pizza shop on my way out of the arena in downtown Indianapolis. Okay, it's a small shop. It was rainy, kind of cold outside. You don't want to go wait outside, but it wasn't like my pizza was already made that took 10 or 15 minutes. I see all the tables have somebody sitting at them, but this one table in particular close by had 2 people, obviously a couple, sitting there. And so I go over and literally sit down or ask them, saying, do you guys mind if I sit down with you? I could see they had the lanyard. They were obviously at the same event that I was. I figure we'll have a conversation, right? So now, one of the things I know, a lot of my coaching clients, a lot of the folks that I speak to or work with aren't always as, excited about sitting down with strangers as I get. Right? It may take a little bit of confidence building, right? But again, let's go back to this concept of what is the extraordinary circumstance that will allow you to have more of what you want, right? To become the next best version of yourself. So in that scenario, let's just kind of, get hypothetical here. What are a couple of things that virtual reality could potentially do for someone to help them be more comfortable to be able to have this conversation? And then I'm going to share what this conversation potentially turned into.
So honestly, I think one of the coolest things here is actually if there was augmented reality that instead of it being all of these chairs filled up, say you sat down at a table that wasn't actually there, but there were some people who went to the event recently and you want to chat with them. So you pop on your augmented reality glasses and now their avatars are sitting at the table with you. The conversation then becomes a little bit more about you're sitting and waiting, but you're able to actually talk and interact with other individuals. And I know this isn't necessarily the direct situation with what you were currently doing, but imagine also if while you were sitting there, you could put on these glasses and invite other people to the conversation, into what's going on, into all of the individual facets of the conversation, as well as getting a little notification on your glasses as soon as your food is ready.
Interesting.
I don't know. So, just a off the cuff thought, honestly.
And it's fantastic. I could see people, sort of saying, what if I go into this virtual world and the people aren't aren't already there, right? Well, the reality is, I mean, just in getting this conversation with you and I started, we have not spoken before we did this interview here today, yet we exchanged a handle and connected on Skype, and here we are recording a conversation virtually. Over Skype. If you've gone through my coaching programs, right, we do a live in-person event, which then parlays into 12 live virtual through Zoom technology coaching calls. Right. And right. If I don't have you today, I can literally send you a link and I can say, hey, come join me in Zoom. Next thing you know, we're sitting here looking at each other face to face over a webcam of some kind. Right.
Right. So and it's like it's like a little screen character. I always imagine them as little like screen characters. You almost got them like you're a little like bendy character and there's like a little box screen on the top. It's like, there's your face,
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So, I mean, here's where I'm going, right? So what if I could, what you're talking about, it would be amazing for just creating the conversation. And I've got the person who I met, I ended up getting his business card. I could literally send him a message and say, hey, would love to get together and just kind of let's chat here. Right. So what if I'm uncomfortable, I'm thinking about something that's maybe not the most outgoing, the most conversative naturally, but they want to get better at that. Could I create a virtual reality training program that would allow somebody to practice in a public setting, possibly even with real people, right? But with no real consequence? Could I create a conversation with somebody or a program that allows somebody to practice and get more comfortable being social?
Yeah, like imagine if essentially you had a little speaker in your augmented reality glasses. Mm-hmm. The speaker would show up as you're going through, listen to what you're saying, and have automated responses to help you through the process of engaging with people based on a preset understanding of who you are. So say, for example, you might like sports and the people around you just came from a sporting event. The thing might actually detect based on your calendar, oh, you recently were at a sporting event. Those people are wearing the same badges using image recognition, then basically saying, why don't you talk about the sports that you guys had just went to see?
Interesting.
Small talk details to help push the narrative, I would say.
I would say also. So, one thing that I think a lot of us are probably pretty in tune with for the most part will be, Facebook. And I think facial recognition on Facebook is getting, increasingly creepy. Right? It's getting very good. I mean, there are people that I'm getting people suggested as friends on Facebook and LinkedIn as soon as I simply add them into my phone. Right. So they're starting to, these social technologies are starting to know maybe who's about to come into my life. I've had that happen several times recently. Or if I just get, if I'm in a photo with a group of people, not necessarily Facebook friends, all of a sudden I will start to see because, when I go to upload that picture, it starts to recognize, that, hey, this may be, Seth Weinstein. Just because we're in the same picture. And so, I'm starting to see if I'm wearing these glasses, I'm walking down the street, or I'm at the vendor event, right? Or I'm at the big industry event of the year. And this facial recognition software is starting to pick up the people around me that says, hey, that's Seth over there in that booth. You should go talk to him. Ask, hey, see if he can grab lunch and talk business. He likes pepperoni pizza or what, right? Because that's the kind of information that's going to be out there. These are the kind of things that I could see, you and I both have a little bit of a sales background. Those are some of the things that could actually augment reality and create a whole new environment that allow you to know who you're talking to, get to know them better. And then please tell me, Seth, that all of this will, as I have these conversations with people and I'm logged into my CRM, that this shit is going to be logged for me so I don't actually have to go down later and write the damn notes down.
Oh, you know it. You're going to look at that business card and all that stuff's just going to already be there. You're going to glance at it for like half a second. Your AI inside your glasses is going to be like, oh, that was a business card.
Oh, God bless it. Like literally when we go to sell our coaching programs or sales training programs to companies, one of the most common questions that we get is, how can you help me get my people to use the CRM? Right? I mean, That's one of the numbers. And I'm like, why can't I just get back into my vehicle and say, Alexa, I just met with Seth. He's interested in this product. He's interested in this service. Here's what we've got to write a proposal. It's going to include this and this and this. And then somebody on my team can already be doing that for me before I even get home.
But why have to tell Alexa? That sounds like an extra step to me. Just have the thing recorded, have the thing define it by using an AI algorithm that's going to be able to spit you out exactly what you talked about, only on the key points, cutting out all of the excess, allowing for you to streamline the process with your team and add an extra level of perfecting the system so that, like, right out the gate, you're sending them all the information, but it's slick, it's streamlined. When you get back in your car, the interface in your car is going to turn on as you're leaving the meeting, ask you if it looks right, hit a button that says send. You won't have to say anything, and it sends off all the information to your team.
It's just like verifying my order at McDonald's.
Exactly. Without taking the order.
Exactly. I love it. I love it, man. So there's so many cool things, you guys, as we look at the technology that are out here coming into play. Now, and if just give you some context, right? I'm sitting here, I'm looking at my iPhone. It keeps sending me notifications about texts and group updates and different things that are happening in my life while I sit here, and it's 2017, right? And so it was about 2007-ish when I first really started seeing people using the iPhone, right? I mean, that was kind of the first generations of it. And so just look where we've come, right? Over the last, 10 years. I'm going to order probably the iPhone X here pretty soon. And that's going to have, 256, maybe more gigs of data. It does, I can guarantee you it already does more than my current MacBook. That's a year and a half old. That it does more, right, than this laptop will do. And so you just start to look at how quickly things evolve. And then through Moore's law, we start to see how there's exponential and even vertical increases. So it'll be happening so quickly and so fast that this stuff is it's literally coming. And this is going to be, my dad used to comment, he's an old farmer, and, he grew up in the 40s and 50s, right? And so very, by today's standards, very rudimentary equipment. Interestingly enough, most of that equipment, Seth, still works. We still own some. So it's funny,
That's
right?
awesome.
Things are made differently from a different era. We still have the same tractor. We still have the same case plow. We still have all these things. But as he just lived through the initial real technological revolution in the back half of the last century, watching how much bigger tractors got and how equipment got better and bigger and different, and we can do more, and we can grow more than at any point in human history on less land, which is important as we try to feed more people. But here's the thing: how over the next 10 years, knowing that the pace with which technology is advancing, how much more are things going to change? And that's, really, I'll toss it over to you, Seth. What do you see? Get futuristic with us, man. Like, given the pace, given that Moore's law just shows how things continue to double and double and double and double and double and double, and now they're doubling faster than ever. What do you see? What's the big crazy thing that could happen?
Oh, I'm imagining full dive reality systems. Those are essentially just you're gonna sit down, you're gonna be like, I want to go into this virtual world. I'm not even gonna be moving my body. I'm gonna go into this virtual world. Now, the biggest obvious issue there is some people are gonna abuse that. But
Sure.
I believe that is a huge next step in it, because we have augmented, we have virtual, but we can't do anything while we are sitting motionless, in a sense.
Sure.
And that's kind of a big step that I see being in there, as well as the implementation of things in the... I'd say things in specifically, I want to say the AI space is going to get very interesting, and prosthetic 3D printing for like organs and things of that nature.
You bet.
I think those are going to be our biggest, like, we're actually going to replace someone's brain in the next few years or something. I want to see, actually, you know what? I think the first brain transplant is going to be done through some advanced technological means.
Sure.
Like some way of storing the brain mid-transplant so that when you install the new tissue, it almost rewrites the human memories.
Fantastic. And that brings us to a whole new level of getting out there. We might have to save that for another episode, right? So,
just a little bit, right?
Guys, just here's where I always like to frame it up with my clients. When we're working together in the classroom, when we're working together in our coaching sessions, if I could suspend reality and time and money were of no consequence, what would I create? What would I make possible for me? And so, a lot of folks, Seth, that I work with just want life to be more simple, right? We just want to have our schedules back or our time back, right? And the technologies that Seth and I are talking about here today, guys, as I personally see them, literally are at least two. And you talked a little bit about artificial intelligence, getting into AI just a little bit. 2.5 of the things that will literally allow us to continue to get better, to make better use of our time, and you're still going to have to commit to being disciplined and training people how to treat you so that they're not abusing your time and all those good things. But these are some of the things that are going to allow us, right, to create. And so just imagine if you could just pick that thing that you could create. You want to have an extra couple hours a day to hang out and talk with a friend or spend with your kid. Cool. How can we use things like virtual reality to do our work so much more efficiently, right? So if I'm somebody who works in the markets and I'm a grain trader or a grain buyer, I can literally, have glasses on, that I just, while I'm going about my day and I'm taking my kid to the park, market updates are coming through, and that will trigger you to say, hey, so-and-so is, needs to sell some grain right now, or so-and-so wants to buy, and you can literally have things programmed into your day to just get it done. Right, and you give the approval, whatever that looks like. You give it a wink, and it just happens. And then you can go about to spending your day. Like I understand. Maybe it sounds a little woo woo, and Mark's imagination is turning on. But here's the deal: if all things were possible, because they are, what would you program your life to be?
Exactly. If in the infinite world of possibilities, in the age of the unlimited opportunity marketplace, what do you choose to do?
Absolutely. I think I will just program some. I will just continue to do this forever and just keep growing. And my virtual brain and I will live in the internet world, and it'll just be Mark Jewell and the Survivor's Guide to Thriving for forever. So. Could be, right? We have no idea. We're getting a little bit far out there. But so Seth, if you could maybe kind of help us bringing this in for a landing a little bit, man. Talk to us a little bit about what the book will be about. So the start already, I think we kind of hit that back in the middle of this interview a little bit, but give us an idea. What are you trying to help people with in writing that book?
So I've realized as I've done everything that I've done, basically came into effect as I was just moving fast. I was getting things done and following an execution and just starting. So my book is all about the guide from going from 0 to 300%. And I say 300% because I truly believe that's where people are putting their all into something. And I know 100% is 100% of the all of what you can put into something. But personally, I believe that people find themselves believing to be giving more than 100%. So I believe that 100% is now a small number. So the guide from 0 to 300%, it's all about how to start, how to find your resources, how not to get bogged down by too many thoughts and too many complications, and finding a path of execution that leads you to your perfect average day.
Fantastic, man. So we go from virtual reality to talking books. Right? I'm sure we can get it on. We'll be able to get on an audiobook and Kindle and all those good things, right? But
oh yeah. And the interesting thing is, think about virtual reality with books.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the next stage.
Absolutely. Fantastic, brother. So, hey, man, I appreciate it. I know we didn't even get through the entire list of things we put together that we could talk about, but I feel like we got a really good handle on some of these cool things and gave people something to think about today. So, guys, if you're interested in just kind of following Seth and seeing what else he has to offer, we're going to send you over to his personal Facebook. Follow along, facebook.com/mad scientist, which is one of the coolest Facebook handles I think you could have. So facebook.com/mad scientist. Seth, any last thoughts to offer up for the group today?
Stay frosty.
Fantastic. Appreciate it. You guys are awesome. Thanks for tuning in to this next episode on the Survivor's Guide to Thriving. Head over, check out Seth Weinstein. He's got great content and awesome thoughts to offer. Look for the book coming out called Start Already. And thank you guys. Tune in. Get into some blockchain, get into some virtual reality. I believe the future will prove that everything else is just surviving, and it is your time to thrive today, my friends. Let's go get it.
Thanks for tuning in to the Survivor's Guide to Thriving podcast. You can find the show notes and links to all the resources mentioned in this episode by heading over to markjeweltraining.com/podcast. And if you feel so inclined, we'd love it if you could head over to iTunes and leave us a rating and review. That's what helps us move up in the charts so that more people can find us and start their surviving to thriving journey. See you next week.